For our video essay, we chose to do whitewashing in Hollywood because as a group we felt it was an important matter to go over. Whitewashing involves movies in which the main character is a white character.
Certain forms of whitewashing are today no longer considered acceptable, one of which is blackface, which is now considered a virtually racist practice. The history of blackface dates back to the early American minstrel shows. In these, white performers would darken their face and hands, usually with burnt cork, so as to appear black, and perform routines.
One example of whitewashing would be that of the character Mr. Yanoshi in Breakfast at Tiffany's. The use of a white male being put in the place of an Oriental Asian sparked controversy as it was seen and known as yellowface. The 1961 hit movie arguably is a prime example of whitewashing that reinforces stereotypes of Asians.
They're all stereotypes, and they're not attractive stereotypes at that. The buffoon, the quiet servant, the enemy, those are the parts. Is that what you want to do? And I said, Daddy, I'm going to change it. I'm going to be an actor.
Sellers in The Party to Mickey Rooney in Breakfast at Tiffany's, Hollywood has long cast big-name white actors in roles where they play characters of a different race. It's called whitewashing, and there are growing calls for it to end. Just recently, Ridley Scott faced criticism for casting white actress Mackenzie Davis to play a Korean character in The Martian. Joining us to discuss whitewashing is Michael Lay of racebending.com, an advocacy website for underrepresented groups in film. It's great to have you with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Why do you think these calls for change are growing louder, Michael?
I think really it's about a lot of things. There's been increasing notice that Hollywood has a long decades history of whitewashing, and especially with the internet, fans are able to express their displeasure and their distaste for that kind of practice.
Another more recent example of whitewashing was the 2010 release of The Last Airbender. Based on the original cartoon, where the characters are clearly of Inuit and Asian heritage. The remake caused a lot of controversy surrounding the casting, almost all of the main characters were Caucasian, apart from the villains who seemed to be played by actors of Indian and Maori descent. When questioned about the poor casting, the director's response was, "When we were casting, I was like, I don't care who walks through my door, whoever is the best for the part." Early casting calls for The Last Airbender read, Caucasian or any other ethnicity. This already creates a bias as it implies that the casting process is in favor of white actors. Despite the director's protestations to the contrary, the odds of true colorblind casting producing a white actor in the 3 separate cases of the main characters of The Last Airbender are highly unlikely.
Exodus Kings and Queens received a lot of backlash for its poor casting accuracy. Despite the film being based in a biblical story of Moses, which was set in Egypt, the film clearly depicts white actors and actresses playing North African roles. The racial inaccuracy of the film caused the film to be banned in Egypt.
What?
It's a biblical movie about Moses, but even though folks during the time of the Old Testament look something like this, the cast that plays Moses, Ramses, Joshua, and the gang look more like this.
The racial inaccuracy of the film caused the film to be banned in Egypt just to avoid conflict. When challenged about the blatant inaccuracy casting, director Ridley Scott essentially alluded that in order to produce such a major production, he needed the support of big film establishments, and these establishments would not fund a film with the lead character being a Mohammed.
The same backlash came from a social media user after Scarlett Johansson was cast in a Japanese anime character in the live adaptation of Ghost in the Shell. People were let down by the fact that the opportunity for casting an Asian actress and finally being represented just slipped away so easily. This has been seen throughout many years in media where celebrities are cast to play characters out of their race. This is a social conflict issue because it is showing the inequality of whitewashing in Hollywood. Society is divided by white celebrities being cast as characters of different races and people are not liking it. It continues to show throughout history, showing that this is a continuous pattern. Many people try to keep their privileges by arguing that movie making is about casting the most talented actress, while others challenge the status quo by saying movie making is a never-ending exercise in radical multiculturalism. For over a century, the entertainment industry has displayed more than its fair share of racism. Since the conception of full-length motion pictures, there has been many horrible discriminations against minorities in film. Many of the most famous films of the mid-20th century, films we regard today as classics, are also some of the most racist, like In Breakfast at Tiffany's, 1961, or the Disney film Peter Pan, 1953. These extreme portrayals have faded from Hollywood. The last serious representation of blackface was in Soul Man in 1986, but racism still haunts the film industry. It just does so more faintly. Instead of a flagrant stain upon cinema, it is a shadow that lurks in the background. Instead of a blackface, there is whitewashing.
People on social are ticked, specifically Twitter. They have been using the hashtag Hollywood whitewashing for years, and they feel like there's still no change.
Well, here's the thing. Look, this is what acting's all about. It's becoming something else, playing pretend. So you're not going to go ahead and just cast somebody based on their ethnicity already. The whole art is you being able to be something else.
Some argue that whitewashing is driven by economic incentives, as they believe popular actors who tend to be white will sell better. Most directors counter-argue this by saying they don't see race, only talent, and they pick the best actors who just happen to be white, bankable actors, and typically white Americans. Some directors feel that having an ethnic minority's name in the film is not as appealing to the audience, and box office sales are more important than acknowledging minority actors. Perhaps many years ago it would have been acceptable because there were not so many actors of ethnic minority backgrounds.
Entertainment critics find colorblind casting to be a good thing. For instance, Hamilton is the most popular Broadway show to date, and it is known for having a majority-minority cast. However, the show was criticized for asking non-white actors to audition at its open casting call in March. Critics believe in colorblind casting because most of the time Hollywood only has parts for the white majority, and it makes it a more even playing field. Jeff Friday, the American Black Film Festival founder, stated, "I think it's great for the industry to get to the point where they are hiring the most talented person."